Who's in the mood for a book haul? Alright, you know what to expect from a book haul by now, but I have acquired some more books over the past couple of months since I filmed my first book haul of the year. I've bought a few, and in particular I've been sent quite a few by publishers, which is very exciting because a lot of them are releases I cannot wait to read or have already started. But I do have a couple of points of housekeeping before we get into the book haul itself. This is probably the last long form video you'll see from me on YouTube for a couple of weeks. I'm taking a fortnight off to get married and go on my honeymoon, so I doubt very much before then I'll have time to film another video, as I also have a lot of writing to get done for the book I'm currently contracted to write, so that's going to take priority in my last few working days before the wedding. But obviously I'm super excited for the next few weeks, and I might still be making some like short form content on TikTok and posting pictures on Instagram. And then secondly, I just wanted to mention, because I almost never mention this in actual videos, but if you would like to support the content I create here on TikTok or on Instagram, as well as the writing I do and occasional podcasts I record, I do have both a Patreon and a Ko-fi. So Ko-fi, you can just make a little one-off donation, and on Patreon you can become a patron or subscriber, and I do post some bonus content on there, although my time priority is always the free content, so that always takes precedence. But now and then I do publish some bonus content when I get a chance on Patreon, and we do have a Discord for organising buddy reads among ourselves with my patrons, which is a ton of fun. So yeah, I just wanted to mention that, particularly with the changes that are coming into effect with YouTube monetization and ad placement in videos. This has already affected some of my more recent uploads and is likely to continue affecting them in the future, and I know a lot of creators, particularly small creators, have mentioned this, that it is going to have an impact on their YouTube incomes. So yeah, if you enjoy my content and you do have a spare pound, you know, prioritise your money, then please do check those platforms out. They'll be linked down below as always, or you could just buy a copy of one of my books. But without further ado, let's get into the new books on my shelves. So let's start with this little bundle of books, because this is a selection of the new titles, they're old titles in a new series from Penguin. So Penguin Publishing turns 90 this year, and I find this so incredibly wild because I still remember Penguin turning 80. They turned 80 whilst I was making booktube content 10 years ago, and I was sent a bunch of the books that they brought out for their 80th birthday, and I don't think in my wildest dreams I imagined that 10 years on, during the 90th anniversary, I would still be getting sent books by Penguin Classics. So that's really cool, and they sent me some of the books in the series, so they do have a bunch more, but they are a selection of classics, non-fiction, fiction, different authors, modern classics, older classics, to celebrate, like I said, their 90th birthday in these lovely little editions, all of which are $5.99. So they sent me Hop Frog by Edgar Allan Poe. I won't go into a ton of detail about each one. Can Socialists Be Happy by George Orwell. The Driver's Seat by Muriel Spark, which I will probably pass along to a friend because I do already own a copy of this. Muriel Spark is a classic Scottish writer. Monkey King Makes Havoc in Heaven, which I believe is an extract from a longer work, because I own the longer work and it's definitely a lot longer than this. Dante's Hell, and if you notice on the front here, it will tell you how long Penguin have been publishing this book. So obviously a lot of these books existed prior to Penguin existing, but they have been publishing editions of it since certain decades. So Dante's work was first published by Penguin in 1949, which is just like a really cool little insight. Then we have Shirley Jackson's The Demon Lover, and this was first published by Penguin in 1984. Some of these were probably first published by Penguin, some of them, like I said, predate Penguin and they just happened to also publish them, and they might be published by other publishers. Revenge by Vladimir Nabokov, The Fire Next Time by James Baldwin, and A Dill Pickle by Catherine Mansfield. Penguin since 1951, and I just think these are really cute. I like that the covers are all like slightly different but still in keeping with one another. I really love this series, and I'll likely buy more of them, but in the meantime I'm very grateful to Penguin for sending me a really cool selection. Then a book I bought myself, and one I've already read, and that is Hunchback by Sao Ichikawa and translated by Polly Barton. So this was a birthday present to myself on my birthday. As has become tradition, I went book shopping with my partner Chris and my best friend Jill, and we went to Portobello Books in Portobello, Edinburgh, and I treated myself to, I think it was 3 3 books. In fact, I'll get those books out next so I can put them all together, one of which was Hunchback. This has won a bunch of awards in its original Japanese, and I believe this translation has been longlisted or shortlisted for the Man Booker International Prize, and it's super short. Like, I devoured this in 2 days and probably could have read it in a day if I'd had the time, and it was really interesting, like really engaging. It's about Shaka, who was born with a congenital muscle disorder, and she lives in and owns basically a care facility. She comes from a really wealthy background and she uses the money her parents left her to fund this residence that other people with disabilities who perhaps have care needs can also live in Japan. And while she lives here, she spends her free time both studying and writing. So she's in her 40s and she takes on a lot of like writing and journalist jobs, but with an erotic focus, and she publishes erotic literature online as a way to kind of like explore sexuality as a individual who has been desexualized her entire life. But nobody knows it's her writing these stories until a member of staff reveals that he has been reading them. I really love that this book didn't try to like sanitize itself or hold back in like the raw emotion and reality of all aspects of the book, like Shaka's experiences with her muscle disorder, her day-to-day life, and her exploration of sexuality through her writing. And I just thought it was incredible. Like, I can understand why it's had so much praise and received so many like shortlists and awards. Then I picked up 2 more books on my birthday, both of which are horror books, and neither of which I've read yet, but I'm very excited to. So the first one is Augustina Bazterrica's The Unworthy, which is a horror novel centred around nuns and a convent, I believe. So I haven't read Tender as the Flesh. Tender as the Flesh is a novel I will likely never read because, well, the trigger warnings and the content and the themes of that book are something I just can't read. But I have read some of the author's short stories and thought they were incredibly well written, so I've wanted to read more by her, and this one sounded much more up my street. But like I said, it's set in a convent. We follow a group of nuns, I believe, who are sort of constantly in competition to rise amongst the ranks, and it sounds quite like insular and claustrophobic, and like there's a lot of secrets. When I read the description, it immediately conjures in my mind Immaculate, which is a film starring Sydney Sweeney that I absolutely loved. I'm sure the plot's going to be very different because I don't get any hints of Immaculate Conception from this book, but I'm excited to see where it does go. And then we have the new book by Rivers Solomon, which is Model Home, another writer who I just think is absolutely incredible. Like, oh my goodness, a stunning like way with words, and I'm very excited about Model Home because I love books with a haunted house theme, even if they're not specifically haunted, but horror that centres around a house, which this one does, obviously. And it's about Esri and their 2 siblings who have to return to a house that they have completely like ignored and abandoned and stayed away from for years after their parents die, and I don't know to what extent it's going to end up being supernatural or if it's just going to be like the ghosts of memories and the trauma they experienced there and the racism they experienced being the only black family in their neighbourhood, but I'm intrigued to find out. Then we returned to another bundle which was sent to me by the publisher. Like I said, I feel like I've been really fortunate recently with some exciting books from publishers, and that is the new editions of T. Kingfisher's Paladins series. So T. Kingfisher is a writer I absolutely adore. I love their horror books. I love their fairy tale retellings, but I have never read this fantasy romance series that they wrote quite a few years ago, and they've just been re-released with these beautiful new covers. So I was all over them, like immediately, yes, please send them to me. I will be devouring them ASAP. So many people have told me I'm going to love them, and like I said, I already know I love the writer's writing, so like there's not a doubt in my mind. But please, can we just take a moment to appreciate these covers? Like, how gorgeous. This reminds me of like the classic fantasy romance covers of like the 80s and the 90s, your mass market paperbacks, the heavy illustrations I absolutely love. And the artwork is by Anna Moshak and the art direction is by Ella Garrett, so like hats off to them. Incredible work. This is Paladin's Faith, Paladin's Hope, I really hope these are focusing, Paladin's Grace, purple, my favourite colour, and Paladin's Strength. They just like I can't stop staring at them, guys. I love them. Now, beyond that, I don't know a ton about the plots. I believe they're set in like high fantasy, almost like medieval fantasy-esque worlds, and that each book follows new characters but set in the same world and interconnected. I'm not even sure which one comes first though, so I'm gonna have to double check that before I read it, but whichever one does come first is coming on my honeymoon with me, because I need some good honeymoon reading for when we're chilling out. We then have a collection of short stories that I was sent by the publisher that I am so excited for. This is Dark Crescent by Lindsay Kroll, and it is a collection of dark short stories inspired by traditional Scottish folklore and fairy tales, themes of mythology, different legends. We've got like direct retellings as well as more loosely inspired, as I mentioned before, and I am constantly on the hunt for A, books inspired by Celtic lore, and B, those specifically inspired by the Scottish folk tales that like I grew up on and love to continue reading now as an adult. So this was an instant yes for me when the author sent me an email, like, yes, I love it. The back describes Dark Crescent as a collection of dark and seasonal tales inspired by Scottish folklore, landscapes, superstitions and omens. So many things I love in that like one sentence right there, and I really hope in general I'm going to see a continuation of this trend for more like Celtic inspired fantasy and short stories and horror, etc. happening in publishing. Like, yes please, more. Then a book I bought myself because of one of you guys. So I recently filmed a video that you might have seen where I recommended all of my favourite books featuring fairies, so like fairy horror, fairy fantasy, fairy romance, children's books, adult books, etc, etc. I crammed them all into one video, and in the comments I got some fantastic recommendations for more fairy books, including this non-fiction title, which is Scottish Fairy Belief by Lizanne Henderson and Edward J. Cowan. Now, despite the massive influx in like witchy non-fiction of late, I still feel like we have a massive dearth of non-fiction concerning fairies, fairy belief, kind of folklore and folk culture, but like specifically focusing on fairies. So this was something I was so excited for because I love fairies. I have an edited volume of stories featuring fairies from around the world coming out in May 8th with Macmillan Collectors Library, and I did a lot of reading and research on fairies, but I had not come across this one. So as soon as, but I hadn't come across this book, so I like immediately ordered it. Thank you so much for recommending it to me. It sounds fantastic and I have no doubt I'm going to love it. Another book that takes inspiration from Celtic lore is the new horror book by M.R. Carey, Once Was Willem, which I was sent by the publisher. Now, to start with, I love M.R. Carey. The Girl with All the Gifts is one of my favourite horror novels of all time. I think it's such a creative, engaging, well-written, compelling book, and I also think the film is fantastic, which isn't surprising given that M.R. Carey also wrote the film script. But combine M.R. Carey's writing and imagination with medieval folk horror, I mean, come on, that sounds phenomenal. Just those few words right there. I desperately need more folk horror in my life. It's one of my favourite subgenres. If you'd like a whole video on that, let me know. But medieval folk horror? Yes, please. And since I don't think I can do a better job of describing it than the blurb does, I'm just going to read it to you. 1100 and some years after the death of Christ, in the kingdom that had but recently begun to call itself England, I, once was Willem, rose from the dead to defeat a great evil facing the humble village of Cosham. The words enclosed herein are true. I speak of monsters and magic, battle and bloodletting, and the crimes of desperate men. I speak also of secret things, of that which lies beneath us and that which impends above. By the time you come to the end of this account, you will know the truth of your own life and death, the path laid out for your immortal soul, your origin and your inevitable end. Giving away very little, but that's probably a good thing. From folk horror to gothic horror, we have a proof copy of The Needfire. So that's the title there rather than on the front of the arc, by M.K. Hardy, which is a duo of authors, and this is, I believe, sapphic historical gothic horror. Like, again, tick, all of my keywords. This was one of my most anticipated releases of the year, so I'm very honoured that Solaris sent me a proof, and for those who are interested, it comes out on the 31st of July, so not long now, although that's kind of scary actually that, you know, we're approaching summer. Then both a new release and not a new release. This is the new paperback edition of Lilith by Nikki Marmory, which is already out in hardback, and I've been meaning to read this book for ages. So when Legend Press asked me if I'd like a paperback, I obviously said yes. I immediately snapped up. I was like, thank you. You dug inside my mind and you knew exactly what I wanted. Happy birthday to me. And if the title didn't give this one away, it is a reimagining or retelling of the life of Lilith, the Judeo-Christian figure who by some accounts was the first woman prior to Eve. In a slightly more contemporary non-fiction title, we have Outrage by Ellen Jones, Why the Fight for LGBTQ+ Equality is Not Yet Won and What We Can Do About It. So first of all, I have to say that I've been following Ellen online for probably nearing a decade at this point, and I am so in awe of the incredible work she has done as an activist both for the LGBTQIA community and for autism awareness. And yeah, she's been doing amazing stuff online and out there in the world for many years, and I know that she has been working on this book for a few years, so I was really excited when I learned it was coming out this year, and I was very honoured that Pan Macmillan sent me a copy, and I cannot wait to read it. I've even talked to Ellen about this book, so I've heard a little bit about what's inside it and some of the topics and issues that she researched during writing it, and yeah, I'm like really excited now to like read the whole thing. But if you're interested in, which really you should all be interested in, what it is like in the modern world to exist as a member of the LGBTQIA community, but in particular how discrimination, transphobia, homophobia, etc. manifest in contemporary society, and the legal and cultural and social areas which still massively need improved upon, but also with like a tone of hope and like a hope for change, then check this out. Just 2 more books to go though, and the second to last one is one that I bought myself, and I picked this up from Book Lovers Bookshop in Edinburgh, which is one of my favourite bookshops. It is dedicated to romance specifically, and this is a romantic fantasy novel called Modern Divinations, which was originally self-published, and I heard so many good things about it as a self-published book, particularly on TikTok, like a ton of rave reviews, and that probably contributed to the fact that it got picked up for traditional publishing and has since been like reworked and edited, I believe. Like some changes have been made in this version and published traditionally, so I decided to pick up the traditionally published version because it's the most recent one and finally see what all the hype is about. But not only is it magical romance, it's also magical fantasy academia, which is another subgenre that I absolutely adore. We follow a student at Cambridge University who has to balance her like ordinary academic life with her magical life. And then last but not least, another book I was sent by the publisher. This is Ancient Greece, the definitive visual history, published by Decor. And look at that cover. Like, this is such a gorgeous design. It's actually not the first book in the series. There's one, I believe, on Egypt, one on China maybe, one on Rome. There's a few in the series, and these are fantastic books if you're interested as an adult in like beginning your journey of learning about the history of, like, well, in this case, ancient Greece, because it covers so much. It covers such a broad range of things. Like, I've opened here a page on Sappho, so we do have like some specific sort of figures covered, but we do have more broadly themes like history and historians. So this is going to cover like figures who wrote historiography in antiquity. We've got plays and playwrights. Why am I opening all the genres of literature? The Athenian Empire, Greek medicine, and it is the work of various different contributors. So there's a ton of different scholars who consulted on or wrote for this book, including one of my PhD supervisors, Professor Susan Deasy. And if Susan Deasy is involved in a book, you know it's going to be amazing. She is one of my favourite scholars. I have so much admiration for her. She's a bit of like a academic idol to me, so you know this is going to be good. And I've read little bits and pieces here and there, and I think it's absolutely stunning and would definitely function as a fantastic introduction to this topic. But there you have it. Those are all of the books that have recently come into my home. Let me know if you've read any of them, what you thought of them, if you're excited for any of them coming out. And also, since I'm taking a couple of weeks off, let me know what content you'd like to see when I come back. What videos would you like to see from me on here? And I can set to working on them when I return. But until next time, happy reading, and I'll see you all again soon. Bye everyone.